geo-lovers, none of us would have ever imagined that we would witness a time when the United States, which has been the main pillar of NATO in opposition to Russia, would now stand firmly in defense of a country that was once its sworn enemy. This is not a nightmare or a far-fetched conspiracy theory. It is a reality that has stunned the world. At the UN General Assembly on February 24, 2025, the United States surprisingly voted against a resolution blaming Russia for the war in Ukraine. The resolution, which explicitly named Russia as the instigator of the conflict, was strongly opposed by President Donald Trump. More surprisingly, the United States found itself in the same camp as Iran.
That is why the United States opposed putting forward another resolution, and that is why we cannot support Ukraine's resolution.
An old and unpredictable enemy, along with North Korea and 15 other countries supporting Russia. It was a plot twist that left NATO itself at a loss for words, vacillating between anguish and confusion. In the past, NATO was founded to fight the Soviet Union, the forerunner of modern Russia, as a bastion of the West's collective defense. But now, as if forgetting history, Trump, who has just been re-inaugurated as president, is shaking up the world order with a foreign policy that is difficult for common sense to digest. Many wondered, is this really the United States we know, comparing it to the leadership of Joe Biden, who dedicatedly championed Ukraine? Biden was like a father to President Volodymyr Zelensky. Advanced weapons, billions of dollars in financial aid, and emotional speeches on the international stage, all out for Ukraine. But now, in the Trump era, all that is just a sweet memory that leaves deep wounds for the Ukrainian people. Trump has a different vision. He is furious with Biden's approach, which he considers too foolish to provide assistance without thinking about profit. In his sharp words, he called Biden and his team fools for wasting hundreds of billions of dollars on Ukraine with no tangible return.
The United States has given $350 billion because we had a stupid, incompetent president and administration.
Yet, ironically, if Trump is consistent with his logic, why has he never mentioned US aid to Israel? The country has received more than $300 billion in military aid over the years, far exceeding the $175 billion given to Ukraine. But of course, Israel is America's eternal ally, so Trump chose to turn a blind eye. Back in Ukraine, Trump came up with a brilliant idea: to have Ukraine pay for American aid with its mineral reserves, particularly rare earths, such as lithium, titanium, and uranium, resources that America desperately needs to compete with China in the technology and defense sectors. Initially, he demanded $500 billion in minerals as debt repayment. A fantastic figure, isn't it? Ukraine flatly refused, feeling this was nothing short of extortion. Europe, which has been providing aid without expecting anything in return, can only shake its head at Trump's sudden turn into a ruthless debt collector. The peak of tensions came on February 28, 2025, when Zelensky visited the White House to negotiate the mineral deal. The initial hope was to find a win-win solution. However, the opposite was true. The meeting in the Oval Office turned into a heated argument. Trump, along with Vice President J.D. Vance, attacked Zelensky with accusations that he was ignorant and playing cards, despite being in a weak position. Zelensky didn't let up. He countered by reminding that Putin had broken 25 previous peace agreements. So simply talking about a ceasefire without security guarantees was futile. Trump was furious, shouting, "You are gambling with the lives of millions of people and starting World War III."
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Eventually, Zelensky and his delegation were expelled from the White House. The mineral deal fell through, and Trump asserted on Truth Social, Zelensky is not ready for peace if America is involved. This failure only strengthened Trump's relationship with Russia. Putin, who already understands Trump's character, seems to have played a smart move. Russia, the world's oil and gas giant, also controls $350 billion worth of mineral reserves in the Ukrainian territory it seized. Trump, with his keen business sense, was clearly tempted. Reportedly, Russia is offering access to new oil fields in the Arctic and a share of mineral revenues from the Donbass, a deal that could bring America an estimated $200 billion in 5 years. While the details are unclear, one thing is certain. Trump is now favoring Putin over Zelensky, or even his own NATO allies. Trump's stance has left Europe in a state of panic. When French President Emmanuel Macron visited the White House, he and Trump confronted each other with data and arguments about their respective roles in the Ukraine war. Macron asserted that Europe had provided substantial assistance in the form of grants, not debt, while Trump insisted that America could no longer be the world's free wallet.
Europe is loaning the money to Ukraine. They get their money back.
No, in fact, to be frank, we paid 60% of the total effort.
This meeting only emphasized one thing. Trump doesn't care about NATO's concerns. For him, America first means every penny must come back, without compromise. This is the painful irony. NATO, once a strong shield against Russia, is now left to fend for itself. Ukraine can only stare blankly, betrayed by the friend it once swore allegiance to. Meanwhile, back in the Kremlin, Putin must be smiling from ear to ear, ready to crack open the champagne to celebrate his diplomatic victory. The geopolitical world is being turned upside down, and we can only watch with mixed feelings. Is this the end of diplomacy, or just Trump treating the world map like a monopoly board? This drama has not only shaken Europe, it has shaken the world. After Trump jolted NATO with his America First attitude, Europe is now starting to feel a deep sense of unease. For decades, they have lived peacefully under the protective umbrella of the United States, with NATO as the main bulwark against the Russian threat. But when Trump declared that America was no longer willing to be a walking ATM for its allies, panic spread. Especially after the meeting with Zelensky at the White House ended in chaos, without a mineral deal, and Trump getting cozy with Putin. Europe felt left out in the storm. Now, whispers are beginning to be heard among European leaders. Maybe it's time for us to form our own military force without America. This issue is not just an empty discourse. On February 15, 2025, at the Munich Security Conference in Germany, Zelensky made a statement that shook the auditorium. In a firm but desperate tone, he said, "Europe can no longer depend on America. It is time to create a European armed force of our own." Those words left the audience speechless, sitting uneasily in their seats. Without America, NATO is like a majestic ship without a captain, big and impressive, but directionless.
We must build the armed forces of Europe so that Europe's future depends only on Europeans.
Zelensky is indeed at the point of despair. Ukraine, now an orphan in the midst of war, has been abandoned by the America that once promised to stand by him until the end. The question now is Europe really serious about establishing its own armed forces? The news that is circulating shows real intentions. According to reports by Politico and The Guardian in mid-February 2025, the European Union is discussing the creation of a rapid reaction force, starting with 5,000 personnel, targeted to be active by 2027. Josep Borrell, head of EU foreign policy, emphasized that this is a concrete step away from Europe relying solely on American assets. However, Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski hastily denied, "We are not going to create a united European army." So, while the idea is tempting, Europe is still caught in a tug of war. It wants to be independent, but is afraid of the complications that come with it. Not only is Europe in turmoil, NATO itself is beginning to crack from within. Turkey, a NATO member that has long been known to play both sides, has been secretly supporting Trump and Russia's stance, supposedly for trade benefits with Moscow. This sparked outrage from countries like Germany and the Netherlands, leading to threats to expel Turkey from the alliance. Meanwhile, the UK was caught in a quandary, whether to stick with America as usual or walk with Europe to save NATO. Truly, this once strong alliance is now on the edge. Emmanuel Macron, the French president, who has long championed European sovereignty, has been the catalyst in this escalating situation. He passionately declared, "We have proven we can stand on our own. It's time for Europe to have its own military power, not just a shadow of NATO." However, many doubted him. Without America, Europe would need massive funding, an estimated $239 billion per year, as well as an additional 300,000 personnel to deal with Russia, according to a Reuters report. That doesn't include logistics and weapons, many of which are imported from America. This geopolitical drama brings a mixture of fear and curiosity. If Europe does establish its own armed forces, NATO could become a mere memory in the history books. But imagining European countries that have been difficult to unite, frugal Germany, ambitious France, and Russia-traumatized Poland, working together to form an army is a big challenge. Russia, once NATO's main enemy, must be enjoying the spectacle with a triumphant laugh. The impact was felt not only by the political elite, but also by ordinary people. In Kyiv, thousands of citizens took to the streets after the failure of negotiations at the White House. They held huge demonstrations, burning Trump posters while shouting, "We were betrayed." In Paris, fear is starting to creep into the hearts of ordinary people, especially as Russian bombs are now getting closer to the borders of Eastern Europe. While NATO is only able to hold meetings without any real action, this is no longer just a political game. It's about human lives at stake. On the other hand, Trump just smiles cynically. He doesn't care if NATO cracks or Europe falls apart. For him, as long as American funds are not wasted for the benefit of others, he is satisfied. For Ukraine, however, this is a disaster. Zelensky, who has now lost his foster father in Washington, can only hope Europe comes to its senses. And the Ukrainian people? They are forced to surrender, waiting for the world to decide their fate while bombs still rain down on their yards. So what will happen next? Will Europe really become independent? Or is all this just a nonsense? What is clear is that the geopolitical world is now on the brink, and we can only watch with our hearts racing. It's not just about armed forces or money. It's about who will be in control in the future. Russia, America, or a Europe that is still adrift in confusion. In fact, there is a wild scenario to ponder. If Europe fails to form its own army and Trump grows closer to Putin, could they collaborate to divide the world? We can only wait, but with great caution, because the world never stops spinning.